Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Coming to Resolution. I'm a little nervous about this, to be honest with you. I'm not on here to give advice. I'm not on here to explain why I stopped giving advice. I'm not on here to do any of that. What I'm going to start doing with this is I'm going to start sharing things that I learn. Because there are a lot of fucking things that I need to learn, and there are a lot of things that I need to fix, and a lot of things that I have to work towards. Oh man, I'm so nervous. But there's a lot of work that I have to do personally, and I figure while I'm doing these things, while I'm doing this work and trying to learn things, I would share what I learn because maybe it'll be of value to you too. I don't know. But today we're going to start with accountability. Now, accountability, everybody has heard the word. And I have even had a class whenever I was going through probation. There was a court ordered class that I had to take, and accountability was on that list of things that were going to be involved in that class. Now, that being said, while I did a lot of work during that class, there's a lot of things about accountability and what is involved with accountability that I did not know, and I was never taught. I am currently listening to a book called How to Be Accountable by Joe Beal and Faith G. Harper. Okay. Now, with this book, I have 4.5 hours left in this book. Okay. And already with this book, I am learning things that I didn't even know. Uh, I have 4 pages of notes just on this book. And it's a 5.5 hour book, I think it is, and maybe a five. I don't know. There's 4.5 hours left in the book. I don't remember how long exactly it is, but it's about 5 hours and some change. Excuse me. Um, and one thing that they started with, and this was really interesting to me, was someone came to them and said they wanted to learn how to be a better person because they are simply a piece of shit. Just straight up. And he did not believe anything less than he was a piece of shit. What they said was actual pieces of shit just do their own thing. They don't care to make changes to their behavior. Which to me means that if you are doing the work and trying to be better and trying to even make better choices, and you're taking accountability for your choices and the consequences that come with those choices, I don't think you're a piece of shit. I think it's a matter of you have things to learn. You're you're learning. Even if it was a shitty choice, even if you really fucked up, I don't think it that necessarily makes you a piece of shit. What I think it is you don't know. Truly. Um, but if you're taking the accountability and you're making the work happen to heal and do better, I think you're far better off than those people who don't care to make those changes. They're totally okay with being a shitty person, whether or not they know they're a shitty person. They're okay with what they are, as they are. And those of us who aren't, I don't think it's that you're a piece of shit or that even I'm a piece of shit. I think it's a matter of we have things to learn. So be a little nicer to yourself if you're trying to make behavioral changes. Don't don't be so hard on yourself. You have to change your self-talk. I have a I have a page about that too. Um Accountability is not self-loathing. accountability work is compassionate and it comes from within. You can only hold yourself accountable. You can't hold someone else accountable because that's more like a punishment, right? They used cancel culture for this particular example. They get on the internet and they shit on this person for mistakes that they made or a situation that they know nothing about. For example, the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case. We heard so much about this and that and so on and so forth, and Johnny Depp was like exiled from Hollywood. He I don't think he could get any work. And people on the internet shit on him because he was the man in the situation. But then it came out to be that Amber Heard was the problem. And everybody's like, oh yeah, Johnny Depp. You know, Johnny Depp's great. But that's that's not the specific example, but cancel culture was the example because we get out there and we punish people on the internet and we shit on people for mistakes that they made that we know nothing about. All we know is what the headlines say and we eat it up. And when we go out there and we punish people, it can lead to some positive results. It can. But that person is not going to grow from whatever it is because of the punishment. It's not going to be a thing where they take in whatever criticism or maybe not criticism that people give them and the consequences that come with whatever it is that they did, because they don't see the problem. They're not willing to admit that they were the problem. They blame it on other people and never take the accountability. And that alone, that punishment creates a barrier in healing and taking the accountability. I thought that was really interesting. Accountability is personal. It's not punishment and it's not ostracism. It is holding space to learn and grow from mistakes. Holding the space to learn and grow. Meaning allowing yourself the grace it takes in order to take a step back and look at the situation as a whole and see what you did and take the accountability for that and learn from what you did. That's what that means. That's how I took that. Now, behavioral patterns can be better mapped out by looking for our personal reasons for our actions. The example that they used in this book was someone running a stop sign in front of you, right? Automatically, they're a shitty driver, right? But if we do it, we're in a rush. We're trying to get somewhere. We're trying to be there quickly for whatever reason when we run the stoplight or the stop sign. And we come up with reasons to justify why we did what we did. When in reality, we just did the same shit that the other person did that we just called a bad driver. You know, excuses don't make the behavior any more justifiable. Truly, it doesn't. I thought that was a really interesting example too, because I see a whole lot of shitty drivers all the time. And then there are times where I make a really shitty move whenever I'm driving and I'm like, I was justified in that. No, I wasn't. I don't get to drive shitty just because other people do. You know, I don't get to be a shitty person just because someone else is shitty. Even if it's directly to me, I don't get to be a shitty person just because someone else is shitty. We don't follow example. We need to adhere to our own morals and our own values. And if your values include being a decent person and even a respectful person, that's what you need to follow. It's not a matter of, well, they did it, why can't I? We're not monkeys. We don't do imitation. That's how we learn when we're developing, is imitation. That's literally how we learn to speak. We imitate sounds that we hear whenever we're growing and we learn to speak. As an adult, you have to hold to your own personal core values and your own morals. You have to hold yourself to that standard. If you aren't doing that, you're no different than the next person who doesn't take accountability. So, something else interesting that I learned in this book. Again, I have 4 pages on this book. I have 4.5 hours left, and I think a little over 5-hour book. I've took a lot of notes, and I have a column that I'm going to share with you, or a page with 2. I'll show you. Anyway, habits and behaviors usually start in childhood. Abused children create maladaptive coping mechanisms to attempt to get their needs met. An example that they used was somebody stealing food, a child stealing food, because maybe they're in a poor family and they can't get food. So a child will adapt and take it upon themselves to go and steal a bunch of food for themselves and maybe their siblings if they have any, because it's like that's how they know they're going to be taken care of. They take it into their own hands and do something wrong in order to do something right. They used a whole lot of other examples for this as a means to see the difference between doing something wrong for the right reasons and just doing something wrong completely. Like they used the civil rights movement and something else, I forget. But the civil rights movement, there were a whole lot of laws broken. A whole lot of laws broken that needed to be broken because we are better morally as people than those laws would allow us to be. If that makes sense. That still doesn't mean you should go and steal a bunch of food. Don't do that. Ask for help. There are donation, whatever. Anyway, don't do that. Sometimes, this is all over accountability, but this is going over behavioral patterns. A traumatized person can feel shame in their trauma, speaking to themselves as if they are the mistake, like them as a person is a mistake, instead of a person who has made mistakes. There's a major problem with speaking to yourself like I'm a fuck up, or I'm not worth anything. I shouldn't even be here, like on Earth. Like there's a whole lot wrong with that. That leads down a whole lot of dark roads that I am personally trying to get myself the fuck out of. Okay. This is why this audiobook has become so interesting to me. Prior experiences shape and sometimes distort present reasoning, which leads to leaps in logic, and I put in parentheses because this is what it meant to me, creating problems where there are none based on previous traumatic experiences. I have personally done that. Recently, I have personally done that. I'm not going to get into what the situation was, but I'm just going to say I let intrusive thoughts win, and I let my brain spiral past a point of return because I didn't know how to get out of my head. I had no idea. I couldn't make it happen. Whenever my brain starts working against me that way, it's very hard. I feel like it's hard for everybody, but it's very hard for me to just snap back to reality and think about things in a logical way. I'm making leaps in logic that don't even make any fucking sense. Okay. Now, in part of the example that they used for this self-talk and accountability being compassionate, because you have to be compassionate to yourself while you're doing this. So they said, make 2 columns on a piece of paper, label one of them self-hatred and label one of them compassionate accountability. And I wrote a couple of things that I have said to myself out of self-hatred. My negative self-talk, we'll call it. And then in the next column, you have to write the compassionate accountability portion of what it is you're saying. You have to correct what it is you're saying. You have to flip it, because if you're just hard on yourself and you just hate yourself, you're not going to get anywhere, because all you're doing is beating yourself up. And I've done this. I've done this for years, okay? I never allowed myself any of the grace that it took to be compassionate towards myself. And that in turn makes it very hard to be compassionate or even considerate to other people, because I'm not doing it for myself. It's very hard to be empathetic whenever you're not even empathetic with yourself. So I wrote a whole bunch of things, like let me give you an example. One of these was simply, I hate me. The compassionate accountability portion of this was, I don't hate me. I hate the behaviors that I've exhibited. Because there have been a lot of behaviors and a whole lot of patterns that I have personally been a part of that has been a major problem for me and for people around me. And while that's hard to accept, it has to be accepted, because those are the choices that I made, and those are the choices that affected my life in a certain way. And because of the effects that these behaviors had, it really kicked my ass into gear into learning to do better. I said that I wasn't going to sign up for therapy. I fucking did it. I did it yesterday. I signed up for BetterHelp yesterday. I have a session next Sunday, and in the meantime, I'm doing research and listening to these audiobooks so I can get tools to do the work. Because I ain't gonna lie to you, I'm fucking sick of me. Okay? I'm getting whitewashed. I am really sick of me. I'm sick of being the person who destroys the things that they love. I am sick of being the person who can't do any better because I don't know how. I don't know how to break patterns. I don't know how to I don't know how to not self-sabotage, okay? Just to be completely honest with you and myself, I don't know how to do that stuff. But doing this stuff that we're talking about and giving you the information, or some information, that I have learned just yesterday, by the way, I think will give us all the tools that we might need in order to be that better person that we want to be. And that's the whole goal here. I don't want to be this. I don't want to be the person who destroys relationships and destroys friendships, even because I can't be better and I can't get out of my own head. I am sick of being that person, and I am fucking not going to be. So something else that comes with accountability: different beliefs can drive wedges in relationships. While other people's values can make you question your own or even make you hate aspects of yourself, this will cause a mistrust and mistreating other people. Your own values must direct what is best for you personally. Make the best choice for yourself based on your own values and morals. Now, that is important for accountability, because everybody has their own idea of what moral or immoral is. Everyone has their own idea of what their values are versus the next person's values. And what they used as an example was politics. Like Republicans or Democrats. They used those specifically, and it kind of makes sense. So like let's say your parents are conservative parents. You grow up and you come up with your own values as you develop, and you decide that you're going to be a Democrat, right? Your parents, because your beliefs don't align, it could be a thing where maybe you just don't see eye to eye, or maybe you just can't get along because your values are different. And that's okay. If your values are different from somebody else's, you don't have to conform to those values. That's not how that works. We can only make decisions for ourselves. Meaning that if you're not going to get along with somebody based on values, you have to make the choice to stand for your own values and hold to those, or you conform to someone else's morals and values and you start hiding your beliefs and you start hating things about yourself. You become closeted with your interests or your values or whatever because you don't want conflict. You don't want to be judged for seeing things differently than, we're going to use parents, because that's what they went with. Another thing about accountability, you can't control other people's decisions, whether that be a spouse, whether that be friends, could be a stranger or a neighbor you don't know, whatever. You can't control other people's decisions. You have to accept what their decisions are and speak on your boundaries if they are crossing boundaries. Because they're going to make their own decisions regardless. Doesn't matter how they see your opinion. It doesn't matter how they hear you or not. They're going to make decisions that they think is best for them, or even if it's just something that doesn't even make sense to you, it makes sense to them, and they made the decision, and all you can do is accept that they made that decision and move the fuck on. You can't control that. And this is why you have to be particular about who you allow near you and who you can trust. Because if someone's going to make the decision or make a decision that hurts you, then it becomes a battle of preferences and boundaries, right? You can speak on this decision and why it hurts you, but if they don't care to listen and they're not going to take the accountability for their choices that hurt you, then that conversation is never going to go anywhere. And they're going to do it again. So you can't know what someone is thinking without communication, and sometimes communication is not an option. The example that they gave for this was, there was one time, Faith, one of the authors of this book, she threw some wood scraps into a dumpster at work. And then suddenly when she gets home, there is the same pile of wood scraps sitting in her yard. She thought for sure it was her neighbor. She was going to go over there and confront this neighbor and kind of make a deal about it, right? Her partner said, "We don't even know who did it. There's no point in escalating something if we don't even know all the facts. And we don't know what that person is thinking. They could have thought that you were making an illegal dump at your place of work, and they decided to be a vigilante." I'm paraphrasing, and go correct what you did. That's all that could have been. So they didn't escalate the situation. They just rolled with it and moved on. And she said that she was really glad that she didn't escalate the situation because she had no idea what whoever did it was thinking. And they couldn't just go and ask and figure out who did it because they have no information on that. So, another thing about accountability, especially when it comes to behaviors, is we have to recognize when we are out of alignment with our own values and morals, because the brain, while its main purpose is to keep us alive and to help us, sometimes it really fucking doesn't do that. Because there are leaps in logic that the brain can make, and there are shortcuts that the brain makes in order to get the result that it thinks it wants, right? Without thinking of consequences, there are shortcuts to get to this end result that may end up in a totally different result and cause a whole lot of chaos while it happens. So we have to accept when we are out of alignment, and we have to choose to do the work of accountability. Accountability does not mean saying sorry and moving on. Accountability is understanding the cognitive shortcuts that your brain has created and how those shortcuts create patterns of behavior that are very problematic. And whenever you're able to do this, it becomes a whole lot easier to take the accountability and maybe even be nicer to yourself, because you're recognizing that your brain has created a shortcut in order to get to this end result. This is what I related to it. Whenever you cut corners in a trade job, things go wrong. You could be working on cars, you could be working on fences, you could be working on doors. I don't give a fuck what you do. If you are working and you're cutting corners at your job, things go wrong. I use trade specifically because I work in a trade. If I cut corners while I'm trying to wind a spring that's as long as me and 6 inches wide, not a lot of people who don't work on doors know this, but there's a lot of force behind these things. Okay? They're called torsion springs. There's a point to this. If I cut corners winding this spring and I just so happen to do it the wrong way and my hand slips, or if my hand slips or I let go of the winding bar for whatever reason and I'm standing in the way of the bar, that thing comes down on my head and my head is probably going to be cracked the fuck open because I cut corners. Now, making shortcuts in terms of behavioral patterns maybe aren't going to ever be that extreme, but it is an example of why we can't cut corners. And we have to recognize when we're cutting corners, because then that'll allow us to get back into alignment with our morals and our values and what's important to us, as opposed to whatever it is that the brain thinks it wants, because it's trying to be as efficient as possible while getting to this end result. And that doesn't work, especially when it comes to taking accountability and holding yourself to a certain moral, I don't want to say high ground, but moral value. I think it's important to recognize that. And there's a lot in here that I didn't even know. I didn't know that accountability started, or I didn't know that behaviors and habits started as children. It makes sense because that's when we're developing, and monkey see, monkey do. That's what we do. That's how we learn, is we imitate. But the problem that comes from imitation is when we are imitating what we see. What we see is not always the right thing. What we see is not always going to take us where we want to be. And maybe while we're developing, we don't know where we want to be, but into adulthood, we have to realize those behaviors and that imitation that you saw is not going to help you. It's not going to take you anywhere. If anything, some of that imitation can destroy a whole lot of things in your life. A whole lot of things. So, this is what we're doing now. While I'm on this personal journey, I'm going to share things that I'm learning. And I'm going to hopefully at least give information on things that people might need to hear, or people might need tools to learn. I'm not here to give you advice. I need advice, but I'm going to share the things that I learn and I think is useful, because I need to be the one who learns, and I want to share what I learn. So that's all I have for that one today. Maybe I'll have another one here soon. What it's going to be about, I don't know yet, but I'll let you know. Anyway, I hope you're having a good day.